In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys some amazing FlutterFlow tips and tricks that are not only awesome and powerful, but also very, very practical. And I'm pretty sure that by the end of the video, you're going to be implementing one or all of these tips and tricks in your apps as well. And make sure you watch the video until the end, because one of the last tips and tricks I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is something that even FlutterFlow does not talk about, but it's very, very powerful. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I demonstrate on this channel can be viewed and or cloned on my Patreon page. And you can learn more about our amazing Patreon community and its benefits via the first link in the description below the video. Now, the first tip I want to share with you is creating a floating overlay. Okay, so here I have a page here with some data. I have a list view. This is a list of European capital cities, and we can scroll it. You can click on this, you can interact with this, but you also have a very, very nice floating overlay. And this is something that I actually used in the latest complex app video that you can see a link to it right there. And so this is really, really awesome. Maybe you want to show like a shopping cart, maybe you want to show a message to the user. You can do all kinds of amazing things. There's lots and lots of possibilities, lots and lots of options at your disposal here. So how exactly is this implemented? Well, if we jump back into FlutterFlow here and we check out this first page, the way that you implement it is by using a stack and creating another column or another element that is going to sit above this page here. Okay, so as you can see, I have a page here, but instead of a column, right away, I have a stack that contains these two columns. Okay, so typically you're just going to have this one column here, right, in your application. But in this case, we have a stack with two columns. Okay, so here I have the regular column that displays all of these elements here, but then I have an overlay column. Now, another really important trick here is that if you want to display your overlay kind of on the bottom, right, towards the bottom, then the way that you do it is you create two more columns here, and this first column you set it as expanded, right? So if you take a look at this right hand side here, you have expansion options, right? So you have things like, you have the default, you have flexible right here, and you have expanded. And so what you want to do is you want to set this empty column as expanded, and it's going to push that second element to the bottom, right? And then you can control the second element. So right here, we have this other column that contains the actual overlay, right? And here you can do all kinds of interesting things, right? So in this case, you can just set it up as you typically would, right? So here I have a row, which is centered. I have here a container, and inside the container, I just have some text here. And on the container level, you can do all kinds of interesting things, right? You can, set the padding that you want from the bottom, right? Because if the padding is 0, then it's all the way at the bottom. But maybe you don't want it to be all the way at the bottom. Maybe you want it to be slightly above, right? To have that really cool effect. Like in this case, I have it kind of way above, but at least you can see that it's floating, right? Because if it's flushed with the nav bar here, then it's not going to look like an overlay, right? So typically what you want to do is you want to give it a little bit of padding, maybe like 10 or 15 to have that effect. So this is a really, really nice little tip, and very powerful and very, very practical. Now, another situation that you might have is instead of having a column as this first element, you may have a container. Now, the issue with having a container is that a container as an overlay, it blocks all the events. So now I have this overlay, but I can't interact with whatever is underneath. Okay, so I can't click, I can't scroll, I can't do anything, because this right here is, instead of a column, it's a container, right? So if we jump back here, go to the second page, you can see that I have a container here. Okay, so maybe you want a container, you want to style it, you want to do some interesting colors there, you want to set the opacity, right? Containers are very, very powerful, but the issue is, because this container is on top of this, I can't interact with the elements. And this is a problem because maybe I want to click on this. Maybe I want to scroll through the list. I can't do none of that. And so what I need to do is, if you're going to be using a container or you're going to be using a widget similar to a container, and so not like a column that allows you to click on everything, but a container, what you need to do is you need to wrap this container in another widget called mouse region. Okay, so we're going to wrap it in the mouse region. And when you click on mouse region, you have this option called opaque. Okay, and so what you want to do is you want to make sure it's off. When you set opaque to off, that means all the events, all the mouse events, it's going to ignore. And so they're going to bubble down or up the tree, depending, the way that you look at it. And so now if we restart this session here, still with the container, it's going to respond to our events. And so if we go to the second page, now we still have this container, but now I can scroll through, I can click, as you can see, the mouse is changing its pointer. I can click here, I can do all kinds of things. And as you can see, when I click, I have a response. It says hi, okay, which is our snack bar, just to show that the click events are functioning, okay? And here we're using a container that's wrapped in a mouse region widget that controls what to do with those mouse events, okay? So it's a similar situation as the first one, except now you have a container, you can do all kinds of interesting things to it, but you're still passing these mouse events to the widgets directly underneath. So definitely look into using a mouse region if you're using a widget like a container or any other similar widget that blocks mouse events. Now, the third tip that I want to share with you guys is what happens after a user logs into the app and what page are they going to be redirected to? Because typically with FlutterFlow, you have one login page and one logged out page, right? So if I come over here and I go into auth here, you can see that my entry page, this is the page that the not logged in users are going to see. So unauthenticated users, and I only have one page that I can specify. And similarly for the logged in page, I can only specify one page. And this is a problem because you might have different kinds of users. You might have an admin, you might have like a reviewer, you might have somebody that, checks various content. You might have different roles and users that are part of these different roles. So as a result, you might want different behavior to take place. And by default, you cannot do that because all the users are treated the same in terms of logging in by FlutterFlow, right? So here I specify page 1, I can specify page 2, I can specify any page. But what we can do is we can create a dynamic redirection. So as you can see on this app here, if we go to the third page, I am showing an admin page, and that is because I'm an admin in our Supabase database, right? So if I jump into the Supabase database right here, you can see that my admin flag is set to true, right? So this is our extension users table here. And if I scroll down, you can see right here, I'm logged in as this user here and the admin flag is set to true. Now, if I set this to false here, we're going to be having different behaviors. So now it's set to false. And now if we reload the app, I should no longer be seeing the admin page. So here I am going to the third page. And as you can see, it says checking user credentials, and now we have been redirected to the regular user page. Now, if I change this back to true and I reload the app, we're going to be seeing the admin page once again. And so if I click here, now we're at the admin page. Now, how is this happening? Well, while you cannot specify what pages should which user see, you can create dynamic page navigation for that page. So because we have this third page as our main page, on that page, we can decide what do we want to do. We can decide what kind of stuff to show to the user or whether to redirect them to another page entirely. Okay, so if we come over here, we have this third page here. And this is our dynamic routing page. Okay, this is not a page with actual information. There's nothing inherently valuable on this page. The purpose of this page is to figure out where to redirect the user next. Okay, so we're just showing some information here, checking user credentials, please wait. And at the top level, what we're doing here is we have a flow, right? So right inside, we're doing a query, and this is important. You want to be doing the query right in the action. You don't want to be doing the query right here, right? You don't want to be doing the query right here because the action might be called before the result of the query is done here. That is why FlutterFlow included the ability to do querying inside the actions, okay? And so what we're doing is we're querying that table, we're filtering by the authenticated user right here, and then we have a conditional action that checks the admin field, right? Remember, we have a Boolean admin field that's going to be either true or false. And if it's true, we're going to navigate to the admin page. If it's false, we're going to redirect to the regular user page, okay? And this is great because it bridges the gap with the stuff, the roles, the user roles, and everything that you're going to have in Supabase. And the behavior in the UI, this has always been FlutterFlow's weak point, right? Because there's no easy way to kind of connect the two. And as a result, you can provide a different behavior depending upon who is the user that's trying to log in and ultimately use this app. Now, my fourth tip is actually a very, very cool flow that I'm sure many of you are going to put to use one way or another. So here we have an input field here that has autocomplete. And so if I start typing James, it immediately shows us James here. And I only have like a couple of users there, and one of them is James. And so if I select James here, it understands that this is an existing client and it has a different behavior. Okay, so it says here, found existing client, and it shows you some data about the client. So this is actually James Smith. He's from New York, New York. So let's say I start typing Robert, okay? And we have Robert here, and I know this is the Robert that I'm looking for. I click Robert, says found existing client, Robert Rolls, Austin, Texas. Now, let's say I start typing Nick, and there's no Nick, right? There's no Nick. Well, as a result, it knows that there's no Nick, and it prompts me to create a new user. And so this is actually the name here. So I can put Nick, and let's say this is Nick Rosas, and let's say he's from San Diego. Okay, and here I can add a client, right? So I'm just going to add a client. It says client added. And so now it knows it, right? If I go back to the field, it sees Nick. I can click on Nick and it says found existing client. It automatically added it, and it's showing I see different behavior. And so I can, I can type James. It's going to find this information. I can type Nick now, and it's going to find this. Or I can, type something else. So let's say I put Tom. No Tom. And now I can enter new information. So I can put, let's say, Tom Riles, and I don't know, Tom is in Seattle, Washington. Let's say add new client, client added, come back here, and it knows Tom again. And so we can keep going, either finding existing users or automatically creating new users on the fly. And I think this is going to be a very, very powerful pattern. I know at least in my future apps, this is going to be a very, very powerful pattern. And so how is this implemented? Well, there's one important thing that you guys need to understand here, and then all of it is going to make sense. We only have one page, and on this page, we have, we're either going to be showing this form here that if I display it right here, this is the form if the user does not exist, right? So this is actually, this whole thing is conditional, right? So if this is a new user, meaning it didn't find it in the list of existing users, it's going to show us this form. If, on the other hand, we have this other column here with all of these things here, and this is going to be displayed if a user is found, okay? So we have this new user. This is actually a page state variable here. So if we come over here, we have this new user that is a Boolean. Okay, so that is a Boolean here. And that we also have this user index that I'm going to explain to you in just a second. And so before I show you the action, let me show you the data. So if I come over here, I have people list, and these are actually a list of people of person type. Remember, because we need to store multiple values, multiple fields for each object, right? So if I come over here, I have person type, we're storing first name, last name, city, and state, because that is the information that we're working with, and that is something that we need to be displaying. And so if I jump back here, all the magic happens here in this autocomplete, right? So first we have autocomplete configured, right? So if I scroll down, you can see that I have autocomplete turned on, and if I expand the properties, I am basically displaying this first name. I'm looking into people list. I am mapping it into the first name, right? Because I can't display the whole object. I need to choose a specific field. Well, I know the user is going to be searching for the first name. I mean, in some situations, they may be searching for last name or city or state, depending on your specific use case. But in our case, this is the first name right here. And so that is what I'm displaying, and that is how I'm finding the users. Now, if we open up our action panel here, we have two actions. If I open this up, everything happens in this callback here called onFocusChange. And this thing gets triggered when we leave the autocomplete field, which is bound to happen, either when you find the name or when you don't find the name. You're going to leave the field because you want to do something else. You want to maybe, create this person or do something else. So when you leave the text field, the autocomplete field, we're going to be doing a couple of things. First, we are going to be setting the new user Boolean. And how we're going to be setting? Well, it's a Boolean, so it's either going to be true or false. And for that, we have a code expression. And basically, we're going to be checking whether what the user entered in the text field actually exists in our database. In this case, this is app state. It could be Supabase, Firebase, you name it. So we have a very, very quick code expression. It's just one line. We simply take a list of names, and we see if the inputted name exists, right? And we know that exists because we're going to get an index of it. And index is going to be greater than -1, because if it's -1, it doesn't exist. So if it's -1, it's going to be false. So if it's greater than -1, it's going to be false because it exists. So new user is going to be false. Remember, we are setting new user. Otherwise, it's true. So if it's not greater than -1, then chances are it's going to be -1. -1 means not found, which means that whatever the user typed has not been found in our database. And as a result, it's a new user, which means this is true. And this is how new user Boolean is set. Next, if we found the user, we need to get the user's information, okay? And this is where we're getting this user index, okay? And this is a very, very similar code expression, but we're just using this function. We're just saying, okay, you found the user, tell me the index in the list. Because if I know the index, I can look up that user and I can get the whole user object. And that is exactly what's happening. So once we have this user index, we can look up all of these fields because we know where exactly, which user it is, judging by the index, okay? So here, as you can see, we are looking up the first name using this user index that was set. Here we are looking up the last name. So once we know the user index, we can get the whole object. And once we have the object, we know all the fields. And that's pretty much it, right? So a lot of the magic happens in this onFocusChange, okay? And typically when you're going to be pulling stuff from a database or via an API call or something else, you're also going to be using this onChange. But in this case, our data is stored as app state. So we don't really need to make an external call. We don't need to do a query or anything like that. But typically, you're not going to be storing, lots and lots of users as app state. They're going to be stored somewhere else. So you typically would need to make an API call or a query, etc., etc. And that is what you're going to be using this onChange here. But right now, the most important thing is this onFocusChange, right? This is where the magic happens. And as a result, we have this really, really nice flow. So I can type Jake, and Jake is not there, so we have a brand new list. I can type, Mike, and actually we have Michael. Okay, that was the third user, but Mike we don't have. So if I type Mike, I have to fill out these fields all over again. And the reason you're seeing these entries here is because I did not reset them here. And so if you're going to be using this component, it's probably going to be a good idea to reset these fields once the user adds this account here to their user list. to their client list. So a really, really nice flow that I'm 100% certain I'm going to be using in my future apps. In fact, I'm building a complex app right now, a next complex app that is using this here, although it's going to be a little bit more complex. And if you guys want to get, access to this future upcoming complex app, and you want to see the discussion that took place regarding what kind of app I'm actually building, check out my Patreon page. We had a big discussion there. We were trying to decide what complex app I'm going to be building, and we decided, and you can learn more about it and also give us your suggestion and feedback as well. Now, this last tip that I want to share with you guys is a lot more powerful than it may seem from this demo I have here. It's a very, very powerful technique, and you're going to see exactly why in a second. So typically, when you're building your app, you may have custom actions or custom widgets. And if you're going to be building like a production type app, you're going to be building a serious app, your app is going to be receiving data via a custom action or a custom widget. So what we're talking about here is an app that's running, but it's receiving asynchronous data. Maybe is a webhook, maybe from Supabase real-time events or something like that. And so as you're receiving this data, the next step is to actually act upon this data, right? So regardless, what's happening, you got to let the user know. Maybe you want to change. Maybe the user paid for a plan, and you need to update the UI, make some features available that weren't available before, or you need to make some very, very important changes. Well, let me show you how you can do it, but also let me show you why certain ways do not work and how to fix them. So here I have a custom widget. This is a very, very simple custom widget, and all it's really doing is it's taking a number, the number is 0, and it's incrementing it every second. And as it's incrementing, we may want to do something with this data, right? This is a very, very simple example. And so typically what you can do is you can set app state, by the existing number, right? You can actually take this number that we're working with inside this custom widget or any data, right? So remember, think about this widget receiving data, or think about this action receiving something, right? We have some data here, and we need to make it available in our FlutterFlow app. Well, I also have here app state called current number, okay? So this is our app state variable. And as a result, I also have this, text widget here that is a text combination, and, widget number, and this is the current number. And so while this widget here, right, we have this custom widget here, it's not displaying anything because it's updating data here. While it's updating data, we're going to try to display what's happening, right? So let me go ahead and run this app. In fact, let me go to this last page here. And so if we go here, this widget, it's updating. You're not seeing it because, this custom widget is not displaying anything, which is absolutely normal. But nothing is happening. Nothing is happening, right? We are updating app state. We are updating our state, but nothing is happening. Why is nothing happening? Well, the reason that nothing is happening is because, remember, with FlutterFlow, the way that you refresh the page so that you can show your new state is by updating that state, right? Because when you set the app state, when you update it, you see that option called rebuild the page, or rebuild all pages, or do not do anything, all right? So if I come over here and let's say, I have this click event here, and let's say I have an action here, and I say, well, I want to, let's say I open this up here, and I search for page state, and we have update page state, and I want to update one of these page states. Well, when I update it, I have the option to rebuild the current page, and that is how you're seeing this new data coming in, right? That is the only way to do it, right? So let me go ahead and delete this, because I just wanted to show you how it's done. But the issue here is we are updating our state inside the custom widget. We're updating it here, and when we try to display it here, of course, it's not going to be displaying these new digits because we're not telling FlutterFlow that we need to rebuild the UI, right? This is very, very important, but there's a way to do it. So if we jump back to this custom widget, here we are setting FlutterFlow's app state. You're probably aware of this app state Very, very useful in complex apps, in production apps, when you have something happening in your custom widget or custom action and you want to reflect that value in your app. This is how you can access your app state inside your custom widget or custom action. Now, what you may not have known, okay, is that you can also do something called notify listeners. Okay, it's a little bit of code, but just one line, just something that you can remember. And when you do a notify listeners on this app state, it's going to rebuild the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save. I'm going to rebuild this custom widget, and I'm going to restart the app so that I can show you this new behavior. All right, so this was successfully compiled. Let's jump back here and let's create a new session so that you can see this new dynamic behavior. All right, so here's the app. If I go to the last page, you're going to be seeing this number being updated. And that is because we are rebuilding the app state from within the custom widget. And you can also do this from within a custom action as well. So this, in my opinion, is probably one of the more powerful tips here, because as you're getting events, maybe somebody purchased a membership or a paid plan, or maybe you're getting data from Supabase or Firebase or somewhere else. You're getting data and you're handling it from within this custom widget here or a custom action as well. And you want to reflect the changes and you want to notify your users that something has happened. Well, this is the way that you do it, because without using this, there's really no clean way, there's no easy way of notifying the users that something important to them has happened. So a very, very powerful technique, and it has lots and lots of uses and opens up a ton of possibilities to make your apps a lot more dynamic and a lot more user-friendly. Now, if you guys enjoyed these tips, there's a lot more content and a lot more tips waiting for you guys at our amazing Patreon community, because not only will you have access to this app where you can tweak it, you can check it out, you can also have a discussion with other users, and I can also help out if I can. But you're also going to get access to all my apps that I've done on this channel. There are tons and tons of apps that do all kinds of things. So depending on what you're trying to do, you're probably going to discover that I've done it before and it's already available on my amazing Patreon community page. But that's not all. When you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to get access to extra content such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, and our Patreon supported masterclass series, where I do comprehensive deep dive tutorials on specific topics, apps, tools, you name it. Basically, the community votes on what I should be doing a tutorial next, what kind of things they want to learn more about. And I go out and I create a comprehensive deep dive tutorial that's a lot more comprehensive than the tutorials I have on this YouTube channel. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a very, very comprehensive tutorial this upcoming week on a very, very important topic that I'm sure will benefit many of you watching this video. And so if you want to learn what that topic is, if you want to join our amazing community, you want to get feedback from other users, you want to take your no-code knowledge up a notch, then you should definitely join our amazing Patreon community and get access to extra content and advance your no-code knowledge. And you can do just that via the first link in the description below the video. So if you're getting value from these videos, you're going to get a ton more value in our amazing Patreon community. So hopefully I will see you inside.